The Kingdom Hearts franchise is one that's been around since the early 2000s, with the first game releasing on the PlayStation 2 in 2002 in North America. Since then, it's grown to have several sequels, a prequel, and interquels, along with multiple ports and collections for newer consoles. Some of them are great, some of them are less than stellar, and in this video, I'm going to be counting down my top 5 games in the series, because yes, there are actually enough games to do that. Kingdom Hearts 0.2 Birth by Sleep: A Fragmentary Passage. The game with the most ridiculous name, meant to be an insight as to what Aqua was experiencing during her time in the Realm of Darkness after the events of the original Birth by Sleep, and leading into Kingdom Hearts 3. This game is viewed by many as being little more than a glorified tech demo for the engine Square Enix was planning on using for Kingdom Hearts 3, but even with that, I still think it's one of the best, albeit the shortest game in the series. This game, while only being 2 hours long, is a sight to behold. The visuals are stunning, the gameplay is fast-paced, running at a beautiful 60 FPS most of the time, and the combat feels the most refined in comparison to everything before it. It's essentially an amalgamation of everything that worked in past games and none of the fluff that felt strange, like the command deck in the first Birth by Sleep. That's not to say it doesn't have its own experimental stuff. 0.2 has a garment thing where completing certain in-game achievements will unlock wardrobe options, so you can deck Aqua out in whatever visual gear you've gathered. The clothing doesn't add anything stat or gameplay-wise, but it's a nice little bonus for doing a little extra outside of the quick story romp. While recording the footage for this, I started to get the feeling that this game looks and feels better than Kingdom Hearts 3, and after playing that for, again, more footage, it wasn't just an oddity. I genuinely believe that 0.2 is more aesthetically pleasing and flows a lot better mechanically than the game this was a demo for, which is a big reason why this game takes the number 5 spot. Okay, unpopular opinion time. I love Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, both the original release on the Game Boy Advance and the re-releases for the PlayStation 2 and Remix collections. The game is meant to serve as a direct sequel to the first game, meaning if you didn't play this before playing Kingdom Hearts 2, it left you a bit lost. Originally putting the sequel on a completely different system and having this game give vital story information was a pretty dumb move on Square Enix's part. It picks up immediately where the first game left off, with Sora and co. running through a grassy field chasing Pluto, who has a letter with the King's seal, only to somehow end up in the middle of a black void in front of Castle Oblivion. From here, the gang decides to enter and climb to the top floor with plenty of interesting plot twists and turns along the way. The decision to throw a wrench into the Mash X to win combat system by adding a deck of cards that you have to essentially win a game of war against the Heartless with was genius. It added so much more depth to the otherwise admittedly kind of shallow combat of the original Kingdom Hearts. You could create a deck of low-cost, low-power cards and just slap away at your target with chip damage, or get deep and methodical by setting up your deck to stack multiple cards into slates, which are the most powerful abilities in the game. It gave you so much more control over how to play it, with it allowing for multiple playstyles. At least in Sora's campaign, because this was the first game that let you play as the edgy, brooding anti-hero Riku after finishing Sora's story. This isn't just a character swap either. Riku has his own narrative and is actually traveling up from the basement levels of Castle Oblivion. Riku plays a bit differently from Sora. It's still the war-based card system, but Riku has several things changed. First off, his deck is set for each floor you travel to. You can't edit it at all. So learning what world cards to use for which floor to get the best use out of his deck is another challenge. He also has access to Dark Mode, where you transform into an Ansem Riku hybrid from the first game. In this form, his slates are straight out of your fight with him in Hallow Bastion. Having this fresh take on the combat and interesting stories from both Sora and Riku's campaign are what earn this game the number 4 spot on this list. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, another game with heavy story elements released for a portable console. This one, however, wasn't immediately relevant on release, so missing out on it didn't mean you were missing anything until the release of some of the later games. It's a prequel to the first game in the series, following the stories of Terra, Ventus, and Aqua. After Terra and Aqua undergo the Mark of Mastery exam, things get a bit funky and they each go their separate ways to figure out what's going on. This game has 3 individual campaigns, one for each of the main cast, a final episode, unlocked after finishing all 3 stories, and in Final Mix, a secret episode, which is unlocked by filling out the player journal. Needless to say, there's a lot of content in this one. Being released on the PlayStation Portable in 2010 made it a forgivable offense to have not played it until the remix ports. But by not playing it on PSP, you missed out on multiplayer. That's right, this game had multiplayer. It was in the form of a PvE battle arena and a Mario Party-esque board game that let you connect with your friends in the Mirage Arena to beat down some of the hardest baddies in the game. While it wasn't a full co-op experience, it was a welcome and unexpected addition for a series that had primarily been single-player titles, excluding Days, but that one's going on another list. This game brought over the command deck from the aforementioned Days, but it added to it and refined a lot about it. I've never been a huge fan of the command deck system myself. The way it works is, you equip abilities to a deck with limited slots, like fire, cure, potions, or more advanced physical moves. There's a lot of depth to this system in the form of melding commands, like mixing Asuna with block to get restoration block, which recovers your HP whenever you successfully block an incoming attack. I just never really got used to it. Each character you play as plays slightly differently, but enough to make a noticeable difference in each playstyle. Terra is a slower, tanky brick wall of a character that you'll be cursing about not being able to dodge properly with. Ventus is an agility-based character who's balanced in physical and magical strength, but is a bit squishier than Terra. Aqua is the caster character, the Kingdom Hearts embodiment of a glass cannon. She can dish out tons of damage, but can't tank a hit herself. To make up for this, she has probably the best guard and dodge abilities in the game, so she has the highest skill ceiling of the trio. The amount of depth this game has, between the varying characteristics of the playable characters, the amount of commands you can customize to your liking, and the good amount of world building it has, makes this one end up with the bronze medal. The game that spawned the entire series, the original Kingdom Hearts. Admittedly, I was a bit torn on where to put this on the list. It's in a weird spot. It has parts that both have and haven't aged very well. When I first discovered this game, it was because my cousin let me borrow it. Over the 2 weeks I had it, I, no lie, planted about 40 hours into it and never made it past Hallow Bastion's basement. For some reason, those gates were just too much for my tiny little 9-year-old brain to handle. Nevertheless, I loved it, and begged my parents to buy me a copy. A month later, my birthday rolled around. I had opened all of my gifts and was internally disappointed that there was no video game. That was until my aunt handed me one final gift. I tore the wrapping paper off to reveal a box of Milk-Bone dog treats. I was confused, looking at my aunt and asking, "Why'd you get me dog treats?" She smiled and told me to open the box. Inside was my own copy of the original Kingdom Hearts, with the black PlayStation logo and shiny cover art. I had the biggest smile ever as I hugged my aunt and ran off to my room to play the game. I didn't even enjoy any of my cake. This game holds a really good memory of my childhood, which probably gives it a bit more bias for its placement on this list. Objectively though, I can see it has flaws. The combat is slow and clunky early on, the camera can be wonky, and the story, while it made sense contained within its own narrative, became more convoluted as entries were released for the series, the latter of which is no fault of the game itself, so it won't be held against it. The game starts you off with just running around Destiny Islands collecting stuff for your raft, so you can sail away to new worlds with your friends. However, the night before you set sail, all hell breaks loose, setting off a chain of events that would shape the entire future of the franchise. The fact that it had the staying power to spawn so many titles in the same franchise over nearly 20 years is a testament to how good of a game this is. For being such an exciting new prospect, my childhood memories, and creating one of my favorite series, I couldn't place it any lower on the list, so here it sits in the number 2 spot. Just a quick little insert here before we get to number 1. I'd just like to thank you guys for watching this so far, and would like to ask that if you're enjoying this, maybe think about clicking the subscribe button and ringing the bell for notifications. I'd also like to do a quick shameless self-plug of my Twitch channel, where I've started working on getting the Platinum trophies for the entire Kingdom Hearts series. I've already finished Kingdom Hearts, Kingdom Hearts 2, and Kingdom Hearts 3. I recently started working on Birth by Sleep. I also play some other stuff like Among Us, Mario Maker 2, and Minecraft, as well as occasionally speedrun some stuff. Also feel free to check out my Discord. Links to both will be in the description below. You saw this coming. Everyone saw this coming. If you didn't, you're probably lying. Being released 4 years after the first game, and it taking another year after that for me to finally get my hands on it, Kingdom Hearts 2 quickly became one of my, and many other fans' favorite game in the franchise, where it would stay indefinitely. Kingdom Hearts 2 took everything good from the first game, improved on it, and added to it. We got a darker story, aimed at the slightly older audience of fans of the first game. Donald was made ever so slightly less useless. Combat had a reworked MP system, which would be reused in 0.2 and 3. Reaction commands were added to give extra flair to specific enemies. Everything just felt more smooth, polished, and flowed better than the original. Even the camera was set further back to get a better view of the action. Oh, and we also got Drive Forms. Drive Forms took everything that felt better about the combat and cranked it up to 11. I love the drive system so much that it made me sad to see it get reworked into command drives in later titles. The game starts out with you playing as a completely new character, Roxas, and you have no idea why unless you've played Chain of Memories first. Basically, Sora's been asleep for the last year, and you're playing as someone who's plot relevant for reasons I won't explain to avoid somehow spoiling a game you might decide to play based off of this video. After completing objectively the worst part of the game, which is basically an hour-long tutorial, you get control of Sora and go on another grand adventure to save Kingdom Hearts from being exploited by more baddies. Without going into detail, once the story finally takes off after the tutorial stuff, it doesn't really have any slow point. It's incredibly well-paced and keeps you invested all the way until the end. Add all this together and you get my number 1 game in the franchise, Kingdom Hearts 2. I would like to note that this list is not a be-all end-all. It's my personal opinion and everyone has their own list. I just felt like sharing mine. Share yours in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.